All my life,
But are they
I wanted to be a cowboy. And so I did the obvious, absolutely wonderful thing to be a cowboy. I married a Texan. Because Texan and cowboy is the same to me. That's like one. So every time I told her I wanted to be a cowboy, she'd look at me, she'd give me the eye, and I got what kind of cowboy I was. See, I'm a Minnesotan. But I want to be a cowboy. Well, in my professional capacity of wanting to be a cowboy, I decided I was going to go to a dude ranch and learn how. So, Terry and I went to a dude ranch. This was a cool dude ranch. And so when I was going, I bought myself a huge Stetson. That sucker cost me $250. It was all black. Man, when I walked around, I was a cowboy. Well, we had a wrangler with all these old horses, and he was the coolest guy. His name was Hank. In fact, I couldn't remember. I asked her, I says, what's his last name? She says, wranglers don't have last names. It's Hank. Well, they might have Billy Bob, but one name. So Hank and I became sort of friends because he looked at my Stetson and he said, that's the coolest hat I've ever seen. Man, that's a nice looking hat. Stetson, right? Yes. Wow. I love that hat. Well, nothing else was said, but when we went out to ride horses, Hank would say, before he left with anyone, he says, we have some rules. He says, and one of the most important one is, when we get out there and we're galloping across the prairie and everything's just blowing away, anything you lose, you lost. So, next day, all these people were telling me about losing stuff and blowing off and blowing this way and blowing that way. And they were pissed. But he wouldn't stop. Hank would not stop. And there was some valuable stuff. Well, I went out and I got on my horse, and Hank was right behind us. He says, start galloping. So we all took off. We went down there. And I felt my Stetson sort of slowing down. You know, when I went to reach it down, yeah! That Stetson disappeared in the wind. And I looked back and I said, I lost my Stetson. Someone's going to pick it up, or the next group's going to run over it. All of a sudden I heard a, ho! And I looked up, and Hank had rode in front of the whole group and stopped everyone. And he drove by, walked by me. His horse, he looked over, didn't say a word, went out, watched him walk down there. Then I looked, he got off his horse, and he bent down, and he picked up that Stetson, and he held it like that. And he says, that's a nice hat. I could see his voice. He got back on his horse and he rode up to me. He says, here, mister, that's a nice hat. Well, I took that Stetson, and I was the proudest person on that whole ride because I was the only one that Hank ever stopped for. Well, the next day, we were all leaving. So, I went and I talked to Hank. I says, Hank, I'm going to do you a favor because you're absolutely wonderful. I took off my $250 Stetson and I said, here's a gift, Hank. And he looked at me and his mouth went open and he says, that's the most beautiful present I ever received. That's going to be my Sunday go to meeting hat. So he put it on and he tried it, and I was a hero for the next day till we left. Well, here I was, a cowboy without a hat. How can a cowboy be without a hat? So, Terry and I drive through Texas a lot, and we have in the RV, and I saw this swap meet and had this little thought in the back of my mind, but I wasn't going to tell Terry. So, we stopped, and we went shopping. And I watched her going off in a direction, and I says, I think the hats are this way. So I went walking the other way, and I looked. Sitting over, about 10 feet from me, there it was, that exact hat. I saw that hat. I fell in love with that hat. I didn't even get close to it yet, but I walked over and I looked and I picked it up and I walked around and I looked at it. Oh, fit! This is cool. I got my cowboy hat. And the ladies, oh, that fits you so good. That fits you so good. And I said, I was looking for the price. How much? They said, will you pay $5? I said, aha. Probably Hank might pay $4, but I could pay $5. I got my hat, but then I looked around. I says, I better get it before she shows up. But before I got over there, I got a tap in the shoulder. I looked around. She looked up at that hat, and she says, you're not really going to, are you? I looked back. I says, I love it, sweetie. I really love it. Isn't it beautiful? Look at it all. She looks at me like a woman can look at you, you know. And I says, oh, but look at the hat. Isn't it beautiful? She says, it's heavy leather and you're going to sweat all over. But I love it. It's beautiful. I love it. She says, she looked at the ladies. They all went. She goes, go buy it. She says, and then let's go, Buck. So I had two things. I had a new hat, and I got a cowboy name, Buck. Thank you.